And then I'm always wanting to know about writers' work habits. And look at this. We had 7, now we've got 6 authors still with us. And I want to know each of your habits. And if 2 of you tell me that you do the same thing every time and are successful, then I'm chucking what I do and I'm doing that. Elizabeth, let's start with you.
I'm probably not a good person to start with. I'll do things like take Rob Kent's class at the Indiana Writer Center that forces me to write a lot, so that you will not make fun of me in class.
Well, that's not true. I did that anyway. I'm a terrible teacher.
I didn't think so. Actually, I thought that the class that I took was really useful. I was going to take your class upcoming, but then they put it back on Zoom again, and I'm just like, I'm on Zoom. I'm on video too much already as it is with my job. I'm just I wanted to see people in person again, but the Writer Center had to put it off again. So
I was heartbroken that the not enough folks got vaccinated, and now we've got variants out there. But hopefully, one of these days, we're going to get back together in person because there's just no substitute for it.
Yeah, I just got my booster shot the other day. So
yeah, so did I.
Congratulations to both of you. And I should point out, Elizabeth has the distinction of being the first former student who's been on the podcast.
Really?
That is a thrill for me.
That's kind of wild. Yeah, because some of the people in the class that I took, I was so impressed with what they were writing. I was like, wow, like these people are way better than I am. So, but yeah, I mean, usually if I get up early enough in the morning, that's my best time to write, because I'm just coming off of sleep, and I think about stuff like all night long, and I tend not to do actually as well late at night, and so I'm actually struggling right now because it's like this is really late for me. So, but yeah, so I try to get something written in the mornings.
Let's toss in reading habits as well to this question. So that's your writing. What are your reading habits?
I listen to audiobooks almost exclusively now. I used to be a voracious book reader, and then I switched to Kindle, but I started listening to audiobooks probably about 15 years ago, and they just especially with Audible and the advent of MP3 players and stuff like that, where you can just stream the books, and now I just tell Alexa to play my audiobook for me at night and set a sleep timer. But yeah, I mean, I still read voraciously, but it's actually listening to it more than anything.
My New Year's resolution this year, after the hellscape that was 2020, was enough politics, no more. The election happened. Every time I go to listen to anything about politics or watch the news rather than just read it and be done with it, I would put on an audiobook. Like, nope, I'm blocking all of that out. And I have enjoyed my life so much more this year. And I've gotten more books knocked out that I would have missed, wasting my time fretting about things that unfortunately they don't ask my opinion on. I keep waiting for that call from Washington. Rob, what should we do? And it never comes.
I'm like, I have all the answers. They should just listen to me. But yeah, especially with audiobooks though, who's reading it makes a big difference. Because like one of the Jim Butcher Dresden Files, I don't think I would have continued on with the series except that James Marsters read those books. And so the first 2 books are good, but I mean, they become excellent 3 on. And if it hadn't been for James Marsters reading it, the dude's just excellent. And I mean, he takes a really good book and makes it, I think, kind of into a great book. So
Ross, let's go to you next. What are your writing and reading habits?
Well, first of all, when I get up in the morning, I will have, I will pick a time to write. And my ideal schedule, which I managed to do about 3 times a week, is I like to get up and edit what I wrote the previous day first. I take a look at what I wrote the previous day, get in my mind where I'm going. I go for a walk, and I usually walk about 2.5 to 3 miles. I come back, and when I come back, I sit down and write. Now that's the optimum day, but I do consulting, so I may have a Zoom meeting, a consulting meeting, or whatever. But if I have that, I will have set aside a time to write in the afternoon or whenever. I don't write well in the evening. Evening is I generally reserve for reading, and I usually have at least 3 books going at any time, maybe an ebook on my computer, and then a couple others that I'm reading in print version. But I read, I think most of us are voracious readers. I probably read I read about a book a week on the average.
And eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Marianne.
Oh no. Oh, after hearing everyone else, I'm like, ugh. You don't really want to hear my habits. I'm kind of all over the place. Right now I have my own book in the works, another book I'm collaborating with my granddaughter, and I just submitted another short story to a magazine. So, I'll have like a dry spell, and then it's like whoosh, all at once. And so not a lot of rhyme or reason to how I tackle things. It changes constantly.
Well, it's working. You know how I know? You're in the new Sisters in Crime anthology, and you're on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast, so it's going all right.
Well, and thanks to the editors who were just fantastic. I mean, they really were. It was great to work with them. And, can't say enough about them. As far as reading, I just love to read, and I love to read a variety. I like to throw in something once in a while that is not a genre I usually will read. I downloaded your Banneker, your book. Am I saying it wrong? Just started that, your free one on Kindle.
Oh, you mean Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot?
Banneker Bones, yes. Yeah, I would say that wrong. But I enjoy, the kids' books as well. So kind of all over the place.
I'm very flattered, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, thanks.
Diana?
Okay, so I used to have a really good writing habit where I would take my lunch hour at work and just go sit by myself in the cafeteria and write for an hour. And usually it was just freehand. And then the rest of the day or that evening, I would be thinking about what I wanted to do the next day on my lunch hour. But once I started my own business, I no longer had a lunch hour. So it was a whole different world. And I would keep a notebook by my bed, and if I thought of something when I woke up at night, I would write it down. So I have a good sized notebook full of story ideas and single lines or dreams or just ideas to get me going on the next story. But what I've found works for me is to commit myself to a submission submission opportunity, and they always have a deadline. And if I'm writing towards a deadline, I can focus a lot more on that. So I like to have a deadline. But the whole pandemic thing has just really thrown me off my game, and I just I've had a struggle trying to write fiction with all the horrors that have been happening in 2020 and currently this year. So hopefully soon I've got things in mind that I want to do and plan my schedule so I can get that hour a day at least, because you can get things done if you devote a certain amount of time to it. Okay, and what I like to read, right? I do listen to audiobooks. I have one all the time when I'm sitting at the microscope doing work. I have an audiobook going. I try to actually read a chapter in a novel, a chapter or two, not too much, before I go to bed at night. And sometimes if I'm traveling somewhere by myself, I'll have the audiobook on in the car. So I usually have several things going at one time.
And that's been a big change. I think that COVID has come along. I used to travel for work a lot, and I don't do that anymore. And I would read, I'm going to San Francisco and I change planes in Denver. I can finish a book by the time I get back home, and we're just not traveling anymore like that. So I'm actually having more trouble finding time to read than I am finding time to write.
Well, I've replaced my travel time with video game time, and video game time is the perfect time for an audiobook because video games are just bing, bing, boom, boom, boom. You don't need to hear that. Just turn that down a little bit and you enjoy a wonderful story. And it's like driving a car, except you're still home, and when you're done, you're done. It's fun. Karen, what are your writing and reading habits?
I'm most productive in the morning, and I'm like Diana. I really excel when I'm under a deadline. And I used to work for a newspaper, so I'm really oriented that way. And short stories are perfect for that. You know, you have a definite finite submission period, usually, I don't know, 6 months, a little more sometimes. And I always read my work before I submit it. When you read it out loud, rather, it really, you really pick up on things that need to be edited that you didn't catch when you're just reading silently. In terms of my reading habits, I like to read in the evening.
I know that one of our members, in fact, the current president of the Sisters in Crime chapter, Janet, she's a journalist, and she will write a short story. And what she does is she reads it out loud backwards, starting with the last paragraph and going back through the story. And I think that's really interesting. I tried it, didn't work for me, but it works for some people. And I think reading out loud does help. But I'm aware of some people, they actually go through it backwards, a paragraph at a time.
And good news, esteemed audience. If you go back and you listen to episode 79, you can hear Janet on this very program talking about her reading and writing habits. And last but never least, returning champion Tony Perron. And you know, it occurred to me that this is your third appearance. So you are either tied or you may be the most recurring guest because you were on the previous Speed City Sisters in Crime. And then, of course, you and I were on a panel together in 2017, which esteemed audience can find back in the catalog as well.
Yeah. It's great to be on again, Rob. It really is.
I'm going to make you co-host next time.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, aside from your desperation, I'll answer the question. But, you know, I'm a terrible procrastinator. I really am. I'm awful. And that's why I wonder if saying what my writing habits are, it really would help anybody, because I know
what you mean.
I used to, like Diana, when I was working, I'm now retired, but when I was working and I was under a deadline because Liz and I had signed the contract with Midnight Inc. And so we had a book a year to write, and I was the deputy town manager for the town of Plainfield at the time. And that was such a busy job, and trying to find time to finish this novel, all the novels, was just really a challenge. But because I had that, I knew I had to write. I would get up an hour before I left for work, and then I would write on my lunch hour. And I was very regimented, and I got a lot done. Now that I'm retired, heck, it's hard for me to sit. I'll sit down and I'll think of things other things I could be doing, and I'm also one of those people who I'll be started on a project and I'll think of something else that I'd like to write instead of the project that I'm on, especially if I'm about halfway through it. You know, it's like, oh, wait a minute. What if I like this story? And so, yeah, it's a wonder sometimes that I get things done. But yeah, I guess the most important thing for me is nothing motivates like a deadline. When I have a deadline, I get it done. So that's probably my key thing. As far as writing, the thing that, or as far as reading, what I wanted to say is, I don't know how people, and you guys, it sounds like you all are able to do a lot of things, like when you listen to an audiobook, or my wife will read a book while she's watching television at the same time. And I love to focus on a book. I don't even have music going when I'm reading, because I just love the words and I love what the author is doing, and I don't want to be distracted from that. And in consequence, I don't get a lot of books read, which I know, which is both good and bad. I richly enjoy the books that I read, but I don't read a lot of them. And so that's just me. I have to be able to just focus on what the writer is saying. I just can't do multiple things. So I guess that's maybe a negative habit. I don't know. But I like to not, when I read, I like to not have music on, or like if I'm on a plane, I may put my headphones on so I don't hear distracting noise, but I won't play the music. You know, like it looks, if anybody else would think I'm listening to music, I just have the noise blocked out so I can read.
I'm the same way, Tony.
Are you?
Yeah, I can't even listen to music when I'm reading.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear somebody else is like that.
You're not the only weirdo.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Earphones, if nothing else, would do a nice job of keeping people from feeling like they should talk to you while they're sitting next to you and you're trying to read.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with the deadlines, if you were to set a deadline, does it have to be official, or if you just say, hey, I'm going to pretend that my deadline is Friday, does that work or no?
Not real well. Not real well, because I know it's changeable. You know, it's
You say which Friday?
Yeah.
yeah. Really, it doesn't seem to work. If I have a deadline, like for a short story submission or something like that, then okay, in my mind, if I really want to get this story into I recently submitted for one of the Mystery Writers of America national books. And I really thought I had a great story, wanted to make sure it got in there. And so I was working on a deadline, and, so those are hard deadlines. But if it's just me, I'm terrible. I really am. One of the things that I've started doing now, since Midnight Ink closed up shop, they closed Llewellyn, who was the parent company of Midnight Ink, shut down the imprint. And so now Liz and I are experimenting with self-publishing, Rob, and I may be talking to you soon about that. But, that I think, what I think I need to do there is to tell people that I'm going to have a book out on a certain date. And then because I've told people, now it becomes a deadline, right? I can't put it off. So I'm thinking that may be the way I'm going to get myself motivated in the future.
That can work. It blew up in my face terribly when I did the Book of David. I released it as a serial novel, and I wrote ahead, of course, and I had the first three, and I thought, well, the last two will be relatively easy, and I can get those done and edited. Because I had my editor available to me, and I have my critique partners and my early readers available. And I thought, well, okay, I'm in the midst of 4. I'll go ahead and I'll put out 1, and I'll let everybody know that, you know, next month you'll get the next one. And sure enough, I fell behind, and I was almost a year late on the 5th one, and I had the angriest emails from readers like, "You left us on a major cliffhanger. How are we ever going to read the end of the story?" And I said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I will never do this again. I wish I had just made up the deadline and kept quiet about it until it was all done."
Oh.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Don't make my mistake, Tony.
Thank you.
Save yourself.
Thank you. I'll just keep procrastinating then.